Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we're going to have a look at another Linux distribution pushing back against the age verification, and let's go ahead and throw in some skepticism towards SystemD and Wayland all at the same time. Yes, this brings us to Artix Linux, a build of Arch, which is based on the newly forked Xlibre instead of using Xorg for your X server, and it uses SystemD free systems with a number of different options. In fact, you can see down there that it uses real initialization systems. I guess SystemD isn't real, despite being popular. And a lot of this comes in with SystemD is now adding some of this age attestation stuff. Again, I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I don't really care if it throws some age attestation stuff. I think the problem I have is that if you're going to add this in response to the laws, well, how long before that attestation becomes verification? Because the New York law, the Brazil law, the Texas law, they all require verification, whereas California and Colorado, where most of the outrage started, only required attestation. But with what they're doing here with Artix, we have a number of different things, and I did like their release here because I had a lot of neat points to mention here. They do mention here that the default X server is now Xlibre rather than using Xorg, which is still available for installation. They are no longer using Pulse Audio, using Pipewire. I guess that's the only one of the new technologies that's universally held. I guess that's because Pulse Audio has had a reputation for being horribly bad. Although I personally have had more problems with Pipewire than Pulse Audio, but whatever. If you're running Plasma, you can choose either Wayland or Xlibre. And I do want to mention here that the OpenRC and DNet systems are there as well. However, there was an issue with the latest package. eLoginD does actually have a conflict with the OpenRC. Now, I'm going to show you at the end of the video the online installer. This actually failed for me to get a bootable system, but it's very possible it's based on choosing OpenRC. So I'll go ahead and give it a try again at the end of the video. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a distribution that I have, and I use the offline mode to run the install. I'll talk about that when we test the installation near the end of the video. And then I got a fully bootable system, and then I went ahead and pushed the upgrades. But there is apparently a problem with OpenRC, so if you're doing that, you need to downgrade eLoginD, and that will end up fixing itself. And the other thing they want to mention down here, Arch is phasing GTK2 out of the repositories, and so this entails the renaming and removing of the newer GTK34, which replaces GTK2. And so there are going to be a few changes in here. They are working to keep things as notable as they can. They also are mentioning that the GNOME desktop is no longer supported because, as they say, it increasingly relies on SystemD, and so GNOME is basically embedding itself with SystemD according to Artix Linux. So they do not actually have a GNOME version. Might be one of the only Linux distributions that does not have a GNOME version if they have a number of different desktops. They did actually mention that there is manual intervention for Plasma 6.4 because Dr. Conky ships with Plasma 6.4 requires SystemD, does not work without it. So you want to remove that package if you're doing Plasma 6.4. And so that is the other note that they wanted to mention. As far as your download options, when you land on their repository, you see this massive group of files here. And this is because they have a version for each initialization system with the desktop and the signature files. So what I did here is I did Cinnamon, and I don't remember which initialization system I took, but there's S6 running it, OpenRC and D in it. And there's for Cinnamon, LXQT, there's Mate, there's Plasma, and there's XFCE. So you can grab a number of those different distros from a number of different places, and you can go ahead and spin those up. So let's go ahead and have a look at what this looks like installed. Here's our login manager. You can see here it's Cinnamon, or the Cinnamon with Wayland, which is still listed here as experimental. And we'll go ahead and get logged in here. And so when I logged in here, the first thing I wanted to see is what was the display server. So, of course, in Linux Mint or just Cinnamon in general, they have a system info, and this didn't help me because it says display server just X11. Okay, no big deal. So with some form of X. So when I went ahead and looked at the Pacman packages that are installed, we can see here and verify that Xlibre is actually the one installed. So that's pretty cool. But it actually turned out that FastFetch, which is installed here, did give me the best overall information. So I can see here from our FastFetch that our window manager is Xlibre here. And I can see all the other information that is relevant to our system, including all of the system specs and things like that. So I did actually verify we are on Xlibre. As far as initialization systems, again, I just don't remember which one I picked. We'll go ahead and have a look at that near the end of the video when we go ahead and show you the installation. So you are going to get a very simple Arch-based system. Now, there are the option when you go to install it with the online option, you have more choices as to desktops and things like that. But what we're looking at here is just your basic, I downloaded the live installer and I used the offline mode. And then once I got here, I went ahead and ran system updates with Pacman SYU. I did install Firefox because the browser that they give us, which is the web here, was horribly bad. It would not load web pages for me consistently. It would sit there and hang. So I'm like, okay, this is nonsense. So that application sucks. What actually is it? Let's go ahead and have a look. No, I don't want to add your monstrosity. Yeah, this is the GNOME web. Of course, it's a GNOME project. That's why it sucks. Got it. All right. So you can see that we have the newer version of the Cinnamon menu where we have our user image up there, and we have the new menu that we covered in our Linux Mint videos about this. As far as the applications they give us, just the basic things that you would need to manage a main system. Here's a screenshot utility, LeafPad for basic text. We have Vim. We have File Roller for our archives. Just some basic tools over there. Graphics, just Eye of GNOME. Here is our internet. Again, I added Firefox and nothing else specifically under our Office. We have MPV media player and, some volume control such. And then basic preferences. These, of course, are all inside of your system settings and some basic administration. So there's really not much in here, just enough basic system tools and not much else you need. You can see here on running Cinnamon, we are running 1 gig while, of course, we are recording. So it is actually running pretty well, of course, running Cinnamon. I didn't change any of the theming. This is the default theming that they give us out of the box here. And notably, if you notice here, the system does not actually have a software installer. So if you go to install software, there's no software installer over here. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to rely on using Pacman for this. So of course, let's do a sudo Pacman. Of course, if you are unfamiliar with Arch, a capital S lowercase YU. This is going to run your updates and upgrades. So it's first updating the repositories, and then it's going to see if there's anything that needs updated. And I guess there already is. Wonderful. I just ran updates like half hour ago. I guess hits Arch. It wants to update everything constantly. There you go. And so that's how you manage it to install an application. It's going to be your dash S is going to install something, dash R is going to remove something. Pacman is not a particularly difficult package manager. So let's do sudo apt install. Oof. I'm in Pac-Man, aren't I? Sudo Pac-Man dash S. Woo! All right, there we are. Let's go with FileZilla. This is an application I use when I'm doing web design stuff. So you can go ahead and just install something like that, and you can get your software installed. You might be able to install the GNOME Software Center. It used to be fairly universal, although it may be lacking in this particular system here. Of course, if you prefer Flatpaks, you can install Flatpak and use like the Flatpak Bazaar application. You might be able to do something like that if you want some GUI manager for software. But this will push this into a little bit more of an advanced distro because it doesn't have the software manager as a GUI application, but the reality is that's not actually all that difficult to work with in this day and age. You can, of course, probably install... Can you install snaps? Actually, I don't remember if snaps is dependent on... Of course, I gotta do list. Yeah, snap not found. Let's see if you can install it. I don't remember which of these are dependent on SystemD or not. I don't work outside of SystemD. Let's see, Pacman -S Flatpak and SnapD. Is it SnapD or is it Snap? I don't know. We'll see. Might just be Snap. Okay, maybe Snap is not an option. We can always do this, SS. Let's see if we can find anything for Snap. It may not actually be in here. Hey, that's a benefit. Look at that. Snappak. Pacman uses Snapper to create post-brief snapshots. No, it does not look like we have an option to use snaps. Let's go ahead and do Flatpak, though. Flatpak. So you can install Flatpak with this, and then you can set that up. We're not going to go through the process of setting up Flatpaks. You just need to start by installing the FlatHub, which you can go over to the FlatHub website, grab all the instructions, and just follow the instructions for following Arch, and then you can have Flatpak support set up in your systems. No snap. Woohoo! Bonus. All right. Anyway. That is what we have over here. As far as running around with the system, I obviously I didn't do a whole lot of testing on things, but overall, from what I can see here, it is going to work pretty well. My drive that I used to use to test things on real hardware has since died. About time. That thing was over a decade old. But when I get a new one, maybe I'll try throwing something like this or some of the other ones onto real hardware and playing around with it a little bit. That way we can test Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, things like that, make sure everything is working. But out of the box, Artix is working pretty well in this particular configuration. So let's go ahead and shut this guy down, and then we'll have a look at the online installer, and we'll see which initialization system I'm using. So we're going to put the ISO back in here. It looks like I did the S6 initialization system, so we went ahead and put that back in. We're going to enter the button here. We're going to boot off of the drive, and everything there looks good, so we'll go ahead and boot off the USB drive. All right, so once we land on the desktop, we can run the installer. So here you can do the offline mode, which I did to duplicate this ISO onto the drive. We're going to have a look at what the what the online installer looks like here. So we're going to have a look here at what this guy looks like. So we'll start by choosing our time zone. And here we can choose our initialization system. Since OpenRC was having some problems, we'll go down here to DNet here. And here you can choose your package selection. We have some default packages. And then you can actually do some an LTS Linux, a few other kernel packages there. If you happen to know you need any of the firmware, you can choose to install those. We have basic utilities, developer tools, and if you want to, you can install the styling for Grub. And then down here we have our our login managers here. And I don't know, it's possible that we ran into the problem before because maybe I didn't have a login manager installed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's add some networking. Do I need all these? Let's see, WPA supplicant. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just add all the networking in there. I do not need any print drivers here and other basic servers. If I need OpenVPN, I'll do that. And let's see. That might be all I need from there for now. Let's go ahead and run this. We'll hit the erase the disk. And then we can do, let's do a swap. Let's do a swap to file. We can choose ext4, Btrfs, F2FS, or XFS. And then we can add in our user. Enter my super secret password. That's definitely not 123. I'm going to choose use the same password for the administrative account. Hit the install, and this will take a few minutes to install, so we'll come back when that is done. All right, so it is done. We're not going to hit the restart now because that'll restart us with the ISO still in the virtual drive. So we'll just go ahead and shut down manually. And we'll go into preferences and remove the drive. It's a GNOME product, so for some reason we have to hit the remove the drive twice. Okay. And this is the same problem I was having before. So I thought the issue was either OpenRC or not having a login manager defined. But yeah, we are still getting back to here. So let's see if I can actually figure something out. All right, well, we were able to get in there by doing a sudo sddm and see if I can actually get in and log in. I can't see any session. And my mouse cursors are all screwed up. So yeah, there is still something fundamentally broken. So my only guess right now, without doing a little bit more research, is if you're using Artix, install in the offline mode and then get your system configured. That worked perfectly fine for me, but running a couple tries on running the online mode always got me into a non-bootable system for whatever reason. So that's kind of why I went with the initial video showing you just using the offline mode, and maybe I'll check the docs to see if there's something in here. What am I doing wrong? If somebody is aware of Artix and can point that out, let me know. I'd be glad to try it again. But anyway, Artix did work great if we happen to use it with the install in the offline installer and then got it configured to use. So go ahead and use that method unless you want to dig through and figure out what your issues happen to be. So let me know your thoughts about all of that in the comments down below.